The original Diablo is finally coming to Game Pass, and what this means is old school Diablo fans are going to get to experience the original game again, which is excellent, but hopefully we're going to get some new players who get to experience Diablo for the first time ever. However, the OG Diablo is a little bit tough. It's a product of its time, and there's a lot of things that can be seen as noob traps or unfun or player unfriendly based on modern standards. So I thought, hey, let's put together a little tips and trick guide for new players who may be experiencing it for the first time. If you have any tips or tricks I don't cover, put them down in the comments down below for new players to look at. Right away when you start the game, you're going to see 3 different classes, and this is where the noob trap can begin. These classes are old school classes, and they do play exactly as they read, but it's not quite the same as modern day games. If you play the sorcerer, you're not going to be teleporting all over the map, taking down huge mobs, summoning fireballs everywhere, at least not at the start. You will get there eventually, but everyone recommends if it's your first time ever playing, just start with the warrior, and I recommend that too. But one thing to watch out for on the warrior, every class has a special ability. The warrior can repair his own items, the rogue can disarm traps, and the sorcerer can recharge his staves. But what they don't tell you with the warrior is when you repair your item with his ability, it permanently, and I mean permanently, lowers the durability of that item. So in this game, when an item loses its durability, it breaks and it's gone forever, so that's bad. But also losing the maximum durability means you're going to have to go back to town to repair it even more often and risk breaking it. So it's just better not to use it like ever, unless you're using it on a garbage item you're going to throw away anyways. You will notice that there is no map in town, and you are permanently walking at the slowest speed possible. They do fix this in the expansion, of course, but you're not going to get the expansion on the Game Pass as far as I know, so you're stuck walking in town very slowly. There's no changing that, so get used to it. One thing I cannot emphasize enough about town is to go and talk to everyone. Once you pick up a quest, go talk to everyone, and they'll tell you something about the quest. It may not always be useful, but the lore and atmosphere of this game is next to none. It is incredible. So if you're experiencing it for the first time, get the most out of it and talk to everyone. Here's the first quest that a lot of people will get, which is the Butcher. You can see I'm talking to him. I'm going to get a little bit of information. Note that you might not get this quest. The way Diablo is set up, not every character gets every quest, so sometimes you have to restart the game to get certain quests. The Butcher quest is iconic. You must get the Butcher quest. Now I swapped over to Hellfire for this really quick because walking in town is so slow. As you can see here on the expansion, you can move a little bit faster, but I wanted to show you why you talk to everyone about the quest givers, because it's just so good. Listen to this.
For you, I saw what Farnham calls the Butcher, as it swathed a path through the bodies of my friends. He swung a cleaver as large as an axe, hewing limbs and cutting down brave men where they stood. I was separated from the fray by a host of small screeching demons, and somehow found the stairway leading out. I never saw that hideous beast again, but his blood-stained visage haunts me to this day.
The lore team just did an excellent job, and the voice actors gave their all, so every quest, talk to town, it is worth it. There's so much good stuff in there. Now, once you actually get down into the dungeon, there's a lot of things to know, and this isn't meant to be like a full walkthrough, but these are just helpful things that I think you should know as a new player. Enemies are stopped by doors, and you can fire through grates. So as you can see here, there's some open grates, so if I had a bow, I could fire through those and take down enemies without them being able to hit me. Enemies also block each other, so if you can find a good doorway and just make them all funnel through that, you can hit enemies one at a time, and that is super important because unlike every other Diablo, you don't want a ton of enemies. When you get hit or hit enemies and it deals a certain amount of damage, it will basically stun you for a brief moment as you get what's called a hit recovery. Your everyday monsters won't always trigger this, but when you're fighting bosses, you have to be careful because they can essentially stun lock you from 0 to 100. Check out this clip where I'm fighting the Butcher, and you can watch as he's constantly hitting me and interrupting my attacks, forcing me to either block or take a bunch of damage, and me not even be able to attack him because he's interrupting my attacks with how fast he attacks.
Fresh meat.
There's also a lot of things that, again, seem like noob traps, like there are shrines that you're going to want to click, but there are also shrines that you don't want to click. See, Diablo is an old enough game where there are things that will permanently disadvantage your character if you mess up. There are enemies that if they hit you, they can permanently lower your maximum HP, and there's nothing you can do about it. Take for instance the Fascinating Shrine, minus 10% of your total mana and plus 2 level to Firebolt. Maybe at a low level that might seem interesting just because, hey, I use Firebolt, but after a certain point you're not only going to be using Firebolt all that much, but you're still going to be using mana, so that's a terrible trade. There are items that are unidentified, like of course every Diablo game. However, some of those items, they can have negative modifiers. You can identify an item, which costs money by the way, and find out that the item has negative modifiers on there, making it worthless to wear, and even worse, it sells for less than it costs to identify it, so effectively it has just stolen money from you. Which brings me to my next point, save. Save a lot. You are going to die in this game, you're going to identify items that are worthless and run out of money. There's a lot of things that you're going to experience that, again, aren't problems in modern Diablo games, but you're going to experience it here, so save often just in case. Make sure you clear and explore every single floor. There is a limited amount of experience that you can gain in each game. Monsters aren't going to be constantly respawning. Once you've cleared a floor, that floor is clear. There is no more experience to get out of it. And of course you want to get experience and level up. Now you can restart the game at level 1 to get more experience, so it's not like it's impossible, but there are some frustrations that come with that, so clear everything and get everything possible, plus you'll need the gold. Speaking of level up, you don't get skills with your level up. You don't automatically get spells, which is what makes the sorcerer a little bit harder. You have to find your spells on the ground or get lucky and buy them in town. And I do mean lucky. The most important spell in the game, arguably, is Town Portal, so you can get back to town so you can sell your gear, restock your potions, all that. One scroll of Town Portal costs 200 gold. For reference, after playing for about half an hour, I had just barely 1,000 gold, so it's not cheap by any means. And in the, 20-25 years since this game has come out, I have never once, not once, found a spell of Town Portal. I have always had to buy the scrolls. It's awful. And then if you want to level the spell up, you have to find another book of the same spell to get it from level 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't just come with level ups. All level ups give you is 5 stat points. Speaking of stat points, you can't reset them. Once they're placed, they're pretty much permanent. There is one potential way to reset them, but it requires getting to level 60 and a bunch of other stuff, so we're not going to talk about that because, again, this is a new player guide, so stats are permanent, so be aware of that. And depending on what class you choose, there are maximums for each stat. The rogue can't get max strength, the sorcerer can't get max strength, so be aware of that limitation as well. And it might be tempting like, oh, I'm a warrior, so I'm going to put everything into strength. That is also a trap. You will need magic, and you will need dexterity to be able to hit enemies, so don't just dump it all into strength. Diablo's a totally different beast from its next games. Even Diablo 2 is way different than Diablo 1 in many ways. It's a much slower pace. The light is much dimmer. You're going to be crawling at a much, much slower pace. But it's worth playing through and it's worth seeing to the end. There's a lot of cool things in this game. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I know it seems negative that I'm saying, oh, well, your skill points are permanent and it's easy to mess up your character and there's a lot of hard fights and you're going to die a lot and you're going to mess up things. That is all true. There is a lot of things that, again, it's a product of its time. It's an older, more hardcore game, but it's still worth playing through to the end. Many fans of the series just talk about how this game oozes atmosphere, the lore is so good, the voice acting, the enemies, everything about this game is phenomenal. If nothing else, sit in town and listen to the music. But what I want to avoid is someone picking up the game, dying on floor 1, and be like, this is way too hard, or this is way too old school, or this is way too dumb, and then never giving it a real chance. It is worth it to yourself as a gamer, and hopefully as a fan of the later Diablo series, to play the original one and experience it for all of its flaws, but all of its good stuff as well. I said it at the beginning of the video, but if there's an important tip for new players that I didn't touch on, put it down in the comments down below. There's millions of things to talk about, and again, I didn't want to get into the later levels and how like floors change and a bunch of other things. I want to leave some surprises for new players, but I want to make sure they can get to see those surprises and not get stuck on the first few levels. So if I forgot anything, put it in the comments below and tell me your favorite Diablo 1 experience. And as always, have a blessed day.